Hi, and welcome to Sabbath Christian Church's sermon. We have been talking about bearing false witness against our neighbor. There's a little bit more to the subject, and we ought to take a deeper look at it. First, the Psalm tells us the right way, God's way. It says, Psalm 15:3, he does not slander with his tongue, bearing false witness. Slander is a big word, deceit. Nor does evil to his neighbor, doesn't do those things. Nor takes up a reproach against his friend. That's the right way. Everything else is upsetting to God and to people. Psalm 101:5 says, whoever secretly slanders his neighbor, I will destroy him. God does not like people doing that, slandering their neighbors and hiding it from them and hurting them in many ways. You could see what happens when someone's given a bad reputation. No one who has a haughty look and an arrogant heart will I, God, endure. He won't take that. No more slandering. My eyes shall be on the faithful of the land. But he who practices deceit shall not dwell in my house. He who speaks falsehood shall not maintain his position before me. God does not like that. The 6 commandments are people against people. But people against people, God created them in his likeness. So he doesn't like what happens to his people. Proverbs goes on to say, a false witness who utters lies and one who spreads strife among the witnesses, among his brothers. Does not like that. And then it goes on to say in another song, a proverb, false witness will not go unpunished. It'll catch up to him. And he who tells tales will perish. God is very much in favor of the 10 Commandments, and he does not want people going around hurting other people's reputation. Now, okay, so that was the Old Testament. What about the New Testament? Well, they got on Jesus' case, which is not unusual. And he said to them, why are you asking me about what is good? They're picking on him again. He says, very powerfully, there is only one who is good. Period. Okay, semicolon. But if you wish to enter into life, roll the thunder, keep the commandments. Very important. And this is one of them. Which ones? They said to him, what do you mean, which ones? The 10. And Jesus said, murder, adultery, all of them. I already said the first commandment. He says, you shall not bear false witness among them. And all the others that he did not, that I'm not mentioning, that he does mention here. And in Mark, they say to him, from within out of the heart of men, deep inside him, the depth. That does not mean that depth has to rule over a person. But out of that proceeds evil thoughts, fornications. This is one of the things that they allow in some of the thinking about the New Testament. Deceit, deceiving people, slander, and a bunch of other things that are mentioned in the other commandments. Like murders and stuff. In Ephesians, he goes on to say, now this is out past the New Testament into the past the Acts and the people who are talking here. And Ephesians says, listen, let all bitterness and wrath and anger and clamor and slander. Again, getting back to that and the other things. And these things build up the slander. Be put away from you, along with all malice. And that's what the slanderer does. Romans 1:19 says, be filled with all righteousness. This is what God wants from us. He gave us the 10 Commandments so that we can live according to God's righteousness. He says, don't be filled with unrighteousness. Don't be filled with wickedness, greed, and evil. He says, gossips and slanderers, haters of God. See, when they do that, they hate people, they hate His Creator. Inventors of evil. Colossians says, interestingly, but now you also put aside, 3:8, malice and slander, again, abusive speech. How else do you slander a person? Opening your big mouth and saying things about somebody. And people are easily conned into that. Don't lie to one another, he says. That's more slander. Abusive speech from your mouth. Says, lay aside the old stuff, the old self with evil practices, and put on the new self, being renewed to a true knowledge according to the image of the one who created him. Ephesians goes on to say, in reference to your former manner of life, you lay aside the old self, the old former of life, with all the deceit. He said, and be renewed in the spirit of your mind. He calls it the lusts of deceit. Something that people want so badly to do is to deceive others. Often for money, but hurting their reputation. Ephesians 4:29 says, no unwholesome word proceed out of your mouth, but only such as word good for edification, the opposite, the need of the moment. He says, and let all bitterness and clamor and slander and malice be put away. Then James gives a fascinating example of how this happens. It doesn't take much of a lust. It doesn't take much of an evil way of thinking. It doesn't take much of the old ways. Look at the ships, huge as they are, with the wind as strong as it is, and they go around and move according to the navigator and to the pilot, and he goes where he desires. How? A little teeny tiny rudder does it. That's what we have to think about ourselves. Doesn't take much. It's that little rudder that moves us in the wrong direction. And it boasts of great things. So the same thing, the tongue, that's the thing. That's the rudder that moves it around. Then he says, see how great the forest is set aflame by such a small fire? And what's the small fire? The tongue is a fire. The very world of iniquity. The tongue is among our members as that which defiles the entire body. It is the rudder, it is the fire, and it sets fire in the course of our life. And it is set fire by hell. Don't speak against one another, brethren. He who speaks against a brother judges his brother. Don't judge the law. You're not a judge, you're a doer of the law. And the one who desires life, to love and see good days, must keep his tongue from evil and his lips from speaking deceit. Amen.